us today. So once again, I'd like to welcome everybody to the CMBES series. This month we're celebrating women in STEM, and we have an exciting presenter for everybody today. I am your moderator. My name is Adil. And again, thank you for your interest in the CMBES webinar series. Again, standard housekeeping items. Just wanted to make sure that you know that this webinar will be on our YouTube channel. So please like and subscribe our YouTube channel and see any of our previous webinars there as well. And once again, a plug to our conference that's coming up on May 16th to the 18th in beautiful Vancouver, BC. Registration for the conference and the outlook for the conference, such as the agenda on a day-to-day basis, is available now. So please do take a look and please register. Again, housekeeping items, questions will be asked at the end. You can use the Q&A feature to ask any questions throughout, but our presenter will be answering the questions at the end. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. So our speaker today, her name is Dr. Jorjoh Ndure Tambedou. So Dr. Jorjoh is a leader in the STEM field in Gambia, which is located in West Africa. She has several years of experience in scientific research, innovation, and STEM advocacy. She studied in the UK, and then worked several years in a scientific research capacity in Gambia, publishing several research papers in peer-reviewed journals. She's been a recipient of numerous national and international awards and has disseminated her research both nationally and internationally, making her a great model for girls in Gambia who rarely have women leaders to look up to in their immediate environments. Her talk today focuses on that in 2019, Dr. Jorjoh embraced using technology with the ulterior goal to solve challenges and contribute to national development. Using her people and project management skills, data analytic and research skills, she led her team to implement several countrywide projects, such as higher education for the Ministry of Higher Education, Science and Technology, developing a business management tool for entrepreneurs to gain them access to financing, a labor market, and migration information system for the Ministry of Trade, Regional Integration, and Employment, to name obviously a few things. And in addition to her work in leading her team to develop solutions that fit the Gambian context and solve problems, she has contributed to the development of occupational standards, policy, strategy, documents to drive the digital transformation agenda and the training of STEM professionals in Gambia. She's the main author of the first accredited mobile application development curriculum in Gambia. She's involved in recruitment of trainees for the pilot to train developers and ensured that 50% of those trainees were women. And recently, she has supported the government and national technical team to develop transformation strategy for the TVET and the skills development system in Gambia, which is funded by UNESCO. So safe to say that Dr. Jorjoh has been busy for the past couple of years. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Jorjoh, and you can let me know, Dr., when to prompt with the video.
So hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for inviting me. I'm happy to be here today.
So should I start the video?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we'll start off with a quick video.
is going to explain already the project for us. The judges, can we have you forward to hear from Hussein Ying?
Living in small spaces like tiny houses, apartment, or family of large numbers. So as we can see, first of all, I made researches into existing products, looking at their durability, aesthetics, cost, and clients. And most of them prefer using bags made out of wood, safe, and easy to assemble. So first of all, I came up with 28 initial design ideas, but broke them down.
I want to use this opportunity also to thank Point Click and Jangal who are in our midst to make this day a success. But please, this is just the beginning. It's a stepping stone. We'll try to work and make sure we have a bigger one next time.
Forecasters will regularly say things like, there's a 90% chance of rain today between after 5 p.m. to indicate that there's a high likelihood of rain during certain hours.
Decompose in the plant. Now, copper sulfate here contains water, which is why it's called aqueous. If you add aqueous to the liquid eddy compound, you can complete the water in it.
So our main aim here is to stimulate the network from the high school to the junior school and the Arabic school.
No, we're gonna do it again.
Can you please pass me the
So let them go around. Let them go around.
If you know the height of the roof and the projection, then you'll be able to use this theorem to find the diagonal length of the roof.
Honestly, I wouldn't have neglected my maths to languages. I was thinking that maths is just a decorum to have good marks, but not to be used in real life. But you now don't have a reason to think that maths is just for marks.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you, Adil, for sharing. Can you share my slides?
Yes. Give me a second.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So that was just a short video that I was showing on one of the STEAM fairs that we organized at one of the high schools in the Gambia. As Adil mentioned, I'm a postdoctoral scientist, currently leading one of the largest but also leading technology companies in the Gambia, and also a co-founder of Afrijula, which I call Afrijula, I call the QuickBooks for the African merchant. Yeah, next slide. So in Gambia, I'm considered as a young scientist since I'm under 40. So I'll embrace that title. In this part of the world, that's considered young. So the outline of my talk, firstly, I wanted to show the video which we've shown. I want to briefly talk about the Gambia, introduce the Gambia to the people that may have not had the chance to visit the country or know about the country, briefly talk about the work I do, my background, the research work that I was doing prior to the transition into entrepreneurship, and talk about some of the similarities and differences between doing a PhD and entrepreneurship. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so as mentioned, I'm involved in STEM advocacy. I organize a lot of STEM fairs at schools in the Gambia, robotics competitions, hackathons. I'm also an advisor for the Women in STEM initiative, and this initiative forms STEM girls clubs in different schools all over the country. We have plans to start nationwide STEMathon, and to have an impact, I have already engaged the Ministry of Higher Education to do this, and the Ministry of Basic Education, but also provide STEM kits. So there's a particular STEM kit called the DEX kit that was developed by a scientist in Ghana that I've already got funders to provide to some of the schools. And currently in the science textbook in the Gambia, for the new ones that are coming out, I have been featured as a Gambian role model female scientist to inspire young girls who usually when they put on the TV, they see someone in a white coat who does not look like them. It shows them that they can be a scientist like me in the future. Okay. I've also realized that to really have an impact, I need to be involved in the development of strategy and policy documents. I have supported different government entities to develop dashboards which will inform policy. I've developed strategy documents. This has been already, Alim had already gone through this. I'm involved in policy review committees, and I am also an auditor for some of the universities. I am a member of different education committees and the chair for the Sector Skills Council, and I'm involved in curriculum development as well as different training initiatives. So where is the Gambia? So the Gambia is the smallest country in mainland Africa. It's flat. So I have traveled to Canada before. I came to present some of my findings at a meeting in Alberta, but I did not last long. I was anemic, so I had acute mountain sickness and hypoxia and had to be rushed back and had to leave the meeting earlier than planned. Hopefully next time I'll be able to stay longer. And that's because I was not used to those high altitudes. The Gambia is very flat, like I said, with a population of about 2.6 million people. It is the smallest country in mainland Africa. However, in research, a lot of people have heard of the Medical Research Council at LSHTM UK in the Gambia, which has one of the highest research outputs in Africa. Okay. Next slide. And the Gambia is known as the smiling coast of Africa. The Gambian people are some of the friendliest you will ever meet. Very beautiful people. Beautiful culture. About 90% are Muslims, around 8% are Christians, and 2% indigenous religion. Like I mentioned, we have beautiful people, beautiful beaches, a lovely country, great tourism sector. Most of the economy is driven by the tourism sector as well as the agriculture sector. However, there's another side of Gambia that we may not see all the time. The poverty rate climbed following COVID to 53.4%, and around 10% live in extreme poverty. Recently, in the last 10 years, we've also seen very young people, young men, willing to risk their lives to travel to Europe in boats. Usually because they feel like there is no hope and they need to get their families out of poverty, and the only way to do that is by traveling to Europe. Next slide. So I think these are some of the motivators why I had to transition. I am a scientist. I love being a scientist. I left the Gambia when I was 16 to study in the UK. I went there for sixth form college, then went on to university. I studied biomedical sciences and had worked in the pharma sector in the UK. Then I decided to return home to Gambia to work on different clinical trials. I remember when I first went to the UK and my form tutor was telling me about how my chemistry teacher went in the staff room and was talking about this young African girl who he had given the whole class a problem and given us 30 minutes to solve, but I was able to solve it in a few minutes, basically because I just used logic. But because I knew why I was there to gain knowledge and to come back home. And then I had the other young people of African descent who although I looked a lot like them, felt that I was a loner and all I was interested in was just learning. So they saw, and I was a nerd, but I didn't look like a nerd. And I lived science, and every opportunity I heard, I spent most of my summer either at the University of Oxford in a maths boot camp or University of Queen Mary, doing research on placements. Every opportunity I heard to do science, it was a passion, and I made use of that opportunity. So following, I did my PhD in immunology, and I think there was a challenge where when I leave the labs, I actually come out of the hospital and I see people that are lying there all night just to get access into the hospital. I see a lot of people that I meet out in the streets that are actually poor. I see a lot of people that can't read and write. And I felt that Eurocentric view of doing research wasn't cutting it for me. I was a result-oriented person and I wanted to see the tangible value of what I was doing. And I think if I was still in the UK, I would be still excited with writing publications, but I felt that my people also, I could use my privilege as well as my knowledge and my skills to really make a difference now to the people of the Gambia. So like I mentioned before, I am the CEO of a software development company, but also the co-founder of one of the fastest growing startups in the Gambia. Next slide. So I remember when I first told my mentors that I wanted to transition, I felt when I did a lot of soul searching, I wanted to take on a humanitarian role. That's what I said. And all of them said, no, but you're a scientist. And I think a lot of times we undermine the skills that we gain from doing a PhD, from the knowledge sharing, the expertise acquisition, collaborative working, just being able to learn all the time, and the project management skills, etc. And these are transferable skills that one can use in so many sectors, and they can use in different roles as well. Okay, next slide. So my research was basically I was investigating how to make vaccine more optimal for infants. So I was looking at regulatory T cells, and mainly in measles vaccinated children. So in sub-Saharan Africa, 5 million children under the age of 5 die annually. And they are 15 times, a child is 15 times more likely to die before their 5th birthday as compared to more developed nations, and 73% of the deaths occur in infancy. Next slide. And the majority of the deaths are the highest in the neonatal period. That's the first, and 44% of the child deaths under the age of 5 occur in the neonatal period. Next slide. And this is really because within the intrauterine environment, they're in a very sterile environment. However, they live and they're exposed to a plethora of pathogens, but also their immune system has been skewed towards a Th2 immunity. So not pro-inflammatory, but rather anti-inflammatory to prevent spontaneous abortions whilst they're in the uterus. However, this is not favorable for the neonate, and they're exposed to so many pathogens and so many infections. Also, what happens is due to these high number of Tregs or immunosuppressive factors, we also see that there are suboptimal responses to certain vaccines in these young children. So what I found as part of my PhD is that most of the work that has been done looking at these Tregs, the regulated T cells, so although they can compromise favorable immune responses, but they also prevent over-exuberant responses, right? So they're quite useful. Most of the work that have been done looking at regulated T cells in very young children have used cord blood. And so what we were doing, basically what we found was that pre-existing Tregs, so Tregs that are there during the time of vaccination actually resulted in lower measles antibody levels among post-vaccination. And then when I looked at the Treg numbers over time, we find that in the second year of life, the Treg numbers are almost halved. And I also found that measles virus actually induces regulated T cells in very young children. So most of this work I did at the University of Oxford, where my external supervisor was, at the Wetterall Institute of Molecular Medicine, as well as at Monash University in Australia, where my other external supervisor was. So this is just showing some of the panels. And so we used multicolor flow cytometry, did a lot of sorting. However, as you can see with the different donors, the infant donors compared to the adult control, it was quite difficult getting the right number of cells with the infant donors. So these were cells that I collected from the Gambia and then froze up and then transported to Australia to do some of these work. But it was quite exciting work, and I was also introduced to new methods as well. And they had the right infrastructure there. Okay, next slide. Yeah, so I was looking at the CD25 high cells. And so you can go to the next slide. This just basically shows the gating strategy, looking at your lymphocytes, taking out the single cells, making sure that they were CD3, CD4 positive cells, excluding any dead cells. You can go to the next slide. But also looking at the regulated T cells. So what I used was the CD4 positive, CD25 high, FOXP3 positives, regulated T cells. Yeah. You can go to the next slide. So this is me when I go to the different universities, you know, being a PhD student, because I worked as a scientist on different clinical trials as well, going to international conferences. But also I had the opportunity whilst doing my PhD to actually go out there in the field. As you can see, there's one of the study donors. And when I interact with these people, I find that I can really do more to help somehow. So I think that was one of the motivating factors as well to this transition. Okay, next slide. So I think there was a bit of an anticlimax after I defended my PhD. I think a lot of PhDs students feel that. It's like you spend so much time working on this, so much effort, and then now what? It's done. But I think what I really enjoyed about it was the training rather than the title. It was being able to produce an original piece of research rather than the degree certificate. My dad tried to get me to go to my graduation in the UK, and I refused. I refused to do that because I just wanted to move on to the next thing. I'm like, I already got the degree, so why do you want me to still go? I think he just wanted a picture. But I think for me, instead of just, I think a PhD should also drive change in society. So after my thesis, it was like, okay, now I have this. And maybe I have some time to experiment what I really want to do, but also how I can really impact society. And that brought me to tech. And I think it's important that also PhDs have an entrepreneurial mindset, being able to take calculated risks so that we can impact and add value to society. How can we use our knowledge, time, and money to effectively reach our goals, create innovative solutions to grow a project from idea to fruition? How can we learn from our experiences and reflect on failures to drive growth, but also communicate our vision to a wide range of audiences? Next slide. So I'm not going to act like the transition was easy. I remember the first time I had to see venture capitalists. This was in Senegal, so it was a forum for Francophone Africa. And I wasn't meant to pitch, so I just listened to all the entrepreneurs pitch, and the venture capitalists were just like sharks. And I was like, wow, they're so different from the humble researchers I've met everywhere in the world. So once the session was over, I actually asked to have a private session with them because I wasn't as confident to go out there. And a lot of the feedback they gave me, I came back and I implemented. But also I realized that I needed to do a lot of reading and a lot of training. And I applied for an investment readiness bootcamp, as you can see here, and this was conducted by Greenhouse Capital in Nigeria. And we did a lot of training on entrepreneurship and how to be investment ready. And I think that really helped me. So I ventured into this unknown world of industry, coming from doing my PhD, and everybody, well, in Gambia, they think you have a PhD, so that's probably the pinnacle of learnedness, where no, it's like I was starting again from scratch, but now from experience, but also using the skills that I already had. And I was willing to learn every day. I'm a student for life. Doing your PhD, you learn new things every day, and you're not also afraid to fail. And I think that really helped me. But I didn't automatically have a role as a CEO. I took on several consultancy roles in QA, data analytics, product engineering, market research, and just used my skills to have an impact on the people around me. And I think as a PhD, one has a substantial business advantage. You know how to learn. And once you know how to learn, it makes everything so much easier. I think for me, the most difficult part was to tell the mentors that I had, people who had supported me, to be able to get a fellowship, to say, no, I don't want to leave the Gambia. No, I think my people, I think I can make more of a difference here, and I think I can do it using technology. And I was surprised that they all supported me. And one of my role models and mentor, Professor Tumani Kora, was like, however you choose to use your skills, it's up to you to help your people. And if you go to the top institutions around the world, you will see PhDs leading and making a difference. And he also told me a story about one of his colleagues who was a medic who went back to Nigeria to lead a bank. And the first time he went there, he didn't understand anything he was doing. And he went, took some time off, did some reading, and came back and is doing extremely well. And then I did research and actually found that about 10% of all CEOs actually have a PhD worldwide. And just last week, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in Gambia told me that he was a biomedical engineer. That's what he studied. And I actually never knew that, because he was quite excited to meet me. He's like, you're the only second scientist I know who's an entrepreneur, but scientists make the best entrepreneurs. So that gave me a lot of hope and really inspired me and motivated me. I think the only other challenge as well for me was a lot of girls in Gambia went into science. And they've written to me and said, even some of the Gambians that were in the UK, we decided to study science because of you. You were our role model. So how would it impact them? I think that was also another thing that made the decision difficult for me. So I am still mentoring those girls. I'm still helping labs to strengthen their lab systems. A couple of times I get these journals writing to me to publish some of my findings. I think my supervisors are actually behind that. So I will ensure that I do publish more, because I published 5 papers from my PhD. I will try to still publish some more from some of the findings that are still unpublished. But I also think that I can also make more of an impact being in tech. Okay, next. And I think there's a lot of valuable skills you get from your PhD training that really help in an entrepreneur's journey, but also in leadership. So being able to gather evidence and collect the data through rigorous research and experimentation, being able to respond to experimental feedback, identify trends and outliers, optimize and innovate systems, and being able to manage multiple projects at the same time. The next slide. And I think some of the good entrepreneurial strategies, such as how to navigate uncertainty, to be able to hypothesize, design, test, fail, and iterate, I think these all work in science, but they also work in business. And I think as a PhD, you always have that internal locus of control to be able to complete a PhD. It means that you are self-motivated and you use your initiative and you're fundamentally in control of your of the outcome of your PhD most of the time. Next slide. So I actually think the journey from PhD to entrepreneurship is actually a natural transition. And I'm just showing here like an annual report from the MRC that I was featured on, and now I am on Forbes as being one of the change makers in the tech industry in the Gambia. Okay. So, however, I think there needs to be a mental shift, so a paradigm shift in not only valuing knowledge, but how can we use this knowledge to translate into the development of a service or a product, but also solve challenges that make life easier for our people. So the next slide, like I mentioned before, I'm also a co-founder of Afrijula, which I call the QuickBooks for the African merchant. You can go to www.afrijula.gm. We have 8,000 subscribers on Afrijula. We're funded. We had received $500,000 US from the UNCDF to develop a digital management tool for Gambian entrepreneurs. So when I came in, I used a lot of my research skills to look at what people really needed and make it user-centric. Because a lot of the work that's currently being done, a lot of the things are done blindly. They're only looking at the technologies, but they're trying to copy what's being done at Silicon Valley, somewhere else in Europe, but nothing that fits our context. And the only way we can do that is through research, but also not trying to target already established business or very well-off people, but there's a subpopulation of business owners, mainly women, that are quite vulnerable, that are semi-literate, that are often forgotten and overlooked, that we're targeting. So the platforms are easy to use. We put in audio helplets in our local languages just to help them and allow them to be able to navigate the platform and gain access to financing by being able to produce reports, financial reports and analytics that I contributed a lot towards to gain access to financing. So next slide. So a lot of people say, but how was the transition? I keep on getting that, but why? But I didn't see it as anything difficult. I just woke up every day, learned new things every day, and try to apply what I learned, but also the skills that I already had and try to apply it to our settings. I have to say a lot of work has been done. We've really developed a lot of platforms for the different government entities. We recently developed a women's app for the Ministry of Gender. But also every day I am working with people, I am mentoring them, I'm developing their talent. I'm trying to work with the education sector as well in a lot of different ways and use my research skills in a different way, but to make tangible impact on our people. And I think education is the easiest way, but quickest way and best way to get us out of poverty and get the Gambian people out of poverty. So I'd like to say thank you for your attention. And I don't know where I'd be in the next 5 years, but I know whilst I'm here, I'm going to make the best use out of what I have, but also try to make sure that I have an impact on my people and use my skills to help them grow, help them develop, and help to make their lives better every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. For anybody who has any questions for Dr. Jorjoh, please utilize the Q&A chat feature or the chat feature itself. Dr. Jorjoh, I have a question with respect to your drive to continuously keep doing this, and your journey is very fascinating. Where you started off doing your PhD. So I maybe wanted to understand why PhD at all? Like, why did you even consider that? Because it seems like down the line, this was sort of your true calling, helping sort of others, and the lack of access to like girls and having role models. But like, where did you come from in the event where you're like, you know what, I want to do a PhD gig? That in itself is a pretty difficult decision to make, I would say.
Yes. So I think growing up, I mean, if you're excelling, you're naturally going to be a science student, right? That's in our setting, it's like, okay, you're doing really well, so you're a science student. And I think I've always loved the arts as well as science, and I've always loved science. And I think it's when I was in the UK, I felt doing the PhD, doing medical research, basic science research is what I really enjoyed doing. And that was fine. But I think it's when I actually came back home and I saw the stark reality. I think when I got a fellowship, when I was successful with my fellowship application, I think one of the things that changed my mind and made me want to stay was I was in my house, and I'm living in a 2-story building. And I looked next. I was just enjoying the view, and it was very early in the morning. And I looked in an unfinished house, and I saw a young child being molested. So I did everything that I could. I ran down. I tried to get the police. I tried to get everything involved, but nothing came out of it. So I felt very guilty, but I felt that I also sometimes I felt I was living in Gambia, but I wasn't living in the real Gambia. And I felt that I actually needed to do something to educate our girls, but to empower our girls as well. And I think that was it for me. It just made the decision really easy that I needed to do more, and that was my calling. And I can still do the science that I love to do, but I think my calling was helping people and making a difference. But then the PhD for me as well was a good training that can allow me to be able to do that.
Oh, that's really inspiring. That's very interesting that something like that had to happen, and to make sort of life decisions a bit easier. So that's obviously very tragic, and happy to know that you're there for all these people. Another question, since I'm online and I don't see any questions on the Q&A, was that being there for sort of the girls and making sure that they're educated is sort of one aspect. And again, this is maybe asking, I may not have that much knowledge, but has there ever been an idea that, in order for the women to have such opportunities, the men also have to realize to give them opportunities as well, right? Like men have to be, and boys have to be educated to respect women as well. So I guess, is there any component of the work that you're doing that caters towards like the boys, anything like that?
So when we do some of the advocacy work as part of the initiative I'm from, so these are things that we talk about. Recently, we called it a breakfast meeting where for a lot of the Muslims, like the day before they get married, the Muslim women, you have something called like the henna night. So we kind of, during International Women's Day, we mimicked the henna night. And a lot of the issues that we deal with as women, a lot of the times it's caused by other women. So we talked about this, but also how can we educate our boys? And we brought the men together as well and explained and talked about challenges that we deal with and how they can help to better support us. So these conversations are being heard.
No, wonderful. Very happy to see that. There's a question online. Iftar asks, have you experienced any pushback from colleagues as you personally grew in knowledge and skills, and as a mentor for other girls?
As a push from colleagues, which ones?
I guess pushback maybe from anybody that is in your circle in the work that you're doing.
So this is it. So the scientists, my scientist colleagues feel betrayed. They feel slightly betrayed, like you've left us. but then they've all left me in the Gambia. Everybody's gone. Nobody wants to stay. So when I first got into the ecosystem, I felt that with the engineers, they felt, okay, this is someone that has come in and have just been taking the industry by storm and changing the ecosystem, and we've been here for how long? But I think after a year or so, they embraced me. They embraced the character that I am, but also knowing that we all have the same objective, but also I can now use my knowledge to help them attain the objective quicker somehow, right? Another one was what I found was also, so the environment that I'm in is very fast-paced. And I think why when I actually came into this environment, I initially came to set up an innovation center for science and technology. But that's still in the pipeline with funding that is, we're going to work with the University of Science and Technology in the Gambia. It's a newly formed university to set up an innovation center. But when I first came, what I also found was that I found with the very young people, when they first graduated, they feel like they know everything. But I came in and I'm asking them questions. They're like, you have a PhD? And I'm like, yes. It's like, not because you have a PhD that you cannot learn new things. So I also want you to continually seek knowledge. Don't think that just because you now have a degree, because a lot of the people, they're like the first time they're having graduates in their families, right? So they come with a degree, they think that is it. And I'm telling them, no, that's not it. I have a PhD and I'm still learning. If I can do, it's just that I may not need to do formal education anymore, right, to have another degree. But every day you see me take a course online. Every day you see me leading about new things. And so you need to also do that. So at the beginning, a few didn't want to do that, but they saw the benefit of what I was telling them. But also you had other people coming in that were willing to join me on this journey. So they actually had no choice. Either they left or they actually joined me in this knowledge-seeking initiative.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Anna has a question. So Jorjoh, thank you for providing this talk. My question is about the state of other women who are taking on this entrepreneurship path.
Mm-hmm. The state? Can you say that again, sir?
Yeah, the state of other women.
Mm-hmm.
So are they reaching out for help?
Yes.
To you?
So just today I had, so there was this business plan competition, which I am a chief judge on. It's kind of like the Dragon's Den in the UK. And the three winners just came and visited me in the office whilst I was trying to finish off my presentation. So I was finishing off my presentation and chatting to them. And they wanted to meet me and they wanted to see where I work. And I introduced them to the team and they really liked that. And what I was telling them is that you've won some money as part of this competition, but it's not all about the money, but use it wisely because no one else is going to give you money like that so easily. But also your integrity and honesty and being willing to look for mentors. And I think for me, I have so many mentors and they have really helped me. I knew the challenges. I knew that I needed to learn. And I reached out to people that have already done it and learned from their mistakes. So it takes me a shorter period of time to get to where I need to get to. So that was an advice I gave to them. So they are reaching out to me, yes, but we also provide a lot of training to these women entrepreneurs. So every other day we train on digital and financial literacy. We train them on how to use Afrijula and onboard them on that. So we partner with the Gambia Women Chamber of Commerce. So we partner with different women groups, but also the ministries to be able to make an impact.
Thank you for that. Fabiola Chia has a question. Congratulations on your excellent work. You are an inspiration. How to impulse the entrepreneurship culture in places where academic degree leads to a research in the lab and publishing only dynamics and only in education or research organizations?
I think maybe you can help, but I really think what I've been trying to do with the ministry with introducing STEM, I think introducing STEM, introducing creativity, innovation, trying to answer find solutions for questions or solve challenges. I think that's the mindset we need to get to. And once they have that mindset, then people will start looking at, when they have frustrations, try to come up with solutions for those frustrations when they see gaps or problems. Because sometimes you might have a gap, but it's not necessarily a problem. Like in the same competition that I'm a judge in, you know, people come up with things that, like certain apps that really may work somewhere else, but it will not work in the Gambia. So identify gaps, but distinguish between a gap and a problem and try to come up with those solutions. So I think it needs to start from a very young age when we introduce them to STEM, instill creativity, instill innovation, and that will really drive the entrepreneurship mindset. But also having examples like myself telling them that, no, like you can do what you want to do and you can be an entrepreneur. I also think that there has been that discrimination, right? So another challenge for me was, okay, how to tell my dad, who spent tens and thousands of pounds to educate me as an international student in the UK, to say, no, I want to receive my salary in dollars. I don't want to leave. So they get hope from seeing someone like me, that I'm here, I am okay, and it can be done.
Your work, is there any, is it strictly sort of for the women and girls in Gambia, or is it sort of throughout, or is there plans to sort of have it more throughout the continent? So
currently it's mainly in Gambia. The Afrijula platform, the product that we have, we currently did a market research survey, so we're actually going to Senegal. We're looking for funding. Hopefully we can get it from the UNCDF again to transition, or I can get some investment to now introduce it to Senegal, where they use the similar languages and they have similar culture. Okay. But most of the advocacy work, this is where it's needed. It's being done in Gambia.
Wonderful. That's awesome. I don't see any additional questions. So if there are none, I just want to thank you, Dr. Jorjoh, again for your talk. I think the work that you're doing is, I know how difficult something like this can be. I know it's a very sort of simple path to have continued your education or continued, after a PhD, go into a fellowship after research, et cetera. But, you took a 180-degree turn, and that's not easy to do. Especially when you mentioned when you were talking with the venture capitalists, and just that type of people, right? You get used to a certain type of people, you get comfortable, and then all of a sudden you have these sort of sharks coming at you and asking questions, and it's daunting. So the fact that you continued and persevered, kudos to you and the work that you've done. And I purposely hope that your work gets extended beyond Gambia and it affects as many people as it can. So definitely keep it up. I think we'd love to have you again and just sort of maybe do a check-in with you, see how everything is going. That would be fantastic to know as well for our side as well.
Thank you so much, Ali.
Other than that, I think we can probably call it a day. So thank you, everybody who joined us today. Thank you, Dr. Jorjoh, for your inspiring talk, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.